Uncensored. Welcome to Hauntoverse Uncut. Hello, Scare Warriors, and welcome to Hauntoverse Uncut. I am, of course, Andrea Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois, joined once again.
I am Brian Bass. What's up?
Oh, man, Brian. Brian is in quite the mood tonight, it looks like.
I am.
Because we're going to be talking.
It's October.
It's October. We're talking some great haunts. We are in the middle of haunt season. Hashtag haunt is here. Finally.
Every day's a good day. Every day's a good day. If you wake up and you look outside and it's gray and gloomy, put a smile on, because that means it is fall. It is spooky. It is chilly. Let's go. Let's get into it.
I got news for you. This haunt season is lining up to be a pretty good one for me, where every single weekend I'm going somewhere different or doing something haunty. I am
green with jealous rage right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, this weekend especially is becoming quite troublesome because of a little
it's
thing.
A little scary for different reasons.
Seriously, because of a little thing called Hurricane Matthew barreling through Florida, really screwing up my travel plans here.
Yeah, that's my middle name, by the way.
That's the real disaster here, Brian. Is it's messing with my travel plans. Oh man, that's terrible. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I'm
sure will be censored for that. Based on our last episode that we just did. So.
Yeah. But anyway, I got Horror Nights in Theory coming up this weekend. In theory, Howl-O-Scream looks like it's going to happen. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. But let's look at some of the stuff I've done already. And then I know you got some haunts you want to talk about. The first one that I went to, I actually went for 2 weekends to Cedar Point's Halloweekends. Haunt at Halloweekends now. We have some pretty cool videos up on our YouTube channel. We have the Call of the Scare, which they completely renovated this year and made it a lot cooler. If you haven't seen that, it's a pretty cool intro to the haunt evening. And we also have a really cool backstage video on what they call Haunt Central, where they take you through up in the grand ballroom is where all the screamsters get ready for the evening with the makeup and the costumes. And part of the Ride Warrior Club at Cedar Point is we got a backstage tour of all of that. Actually saw a demonstration of them putting on the prosthetic masks and makeup. So that was actually a really cool thing to do too. But to talk about the haunt, you would think that being the 20th anniversary of Haunt at Cedar Point. The 20th anniversary, pretty big number, right? Pretty big number.
That's right. And you look at other things that have done that. I mean, Halloween Horror Nights 20 was one of my favorite years. And most businesses, not just amusement park, you capitalize on the anniversaries.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell me, Andy, how did they capitalize? How did they do it?
Well, they did it by not putting in any new haunts whatsoever.
Bold tactic.
Yeah, bold tactic. And in fairness, I will say, Cedar Fair has been flirting with this idea of the skeleton key room, and they haven't really figured it out yet. Like they like this idea that people who buy the Freight Lane, which is the fast pass system for haunt there, that they should get something extra, a different room on top of it that maybe takes it a little bit more extreme.
Which is a great idea.
Great idea. I've done the skeleton key rooms at Cedar Point before. I am not a huge fan of what goes on in there. I think it's kind of hokey and stupid. I like the idea of, I've never been a Fear Factor fan, and it just seems like it's a lot of that. Yeah. Like, eat this, put your hand in that, touch this, smell that. It's kind of, it's weird. There's no other word to describe it. But now what they've done is they've taken them out of the haunts, which is a great idea because it was a disaster inside the haunt. that you have a flow through going. and people are walking, and you have a skeleton key, and now you're pulling people over. They only want to put 5 people in the room at a time, so you have a queue forming inside the haunt.
Yeah.
Bad idea, right? Bad idea, pretty much.
Kind of ruins that whole pacing and atmosphere, I think.
Yeah. So what they did is they moved them out of the haunts and put them into separate rooms on Frontier Trail. Unfortunately, I cannot review those because I did not do them, because I'm not paying $50 to get Fright Lane just to do these haunts. The exciting part is that one of them, now maybe one of our listeners out there can talk about it, but one of them had a lot of old props from Happy Jack's Toy Factory. And as we all know, people speak in hushed tones and reverence of the great Happy Jacks. There's 2 things at Cedar Point you have to speak highly of. It's Happy Jack's Toy Factory and Terror Island. If you don't speak in hushed tones and reverence of those 2 things, there's something wrong with you, and you don't really love Cedar Point Haunt.
There's a door, and you can see your way out if you don't. There's arguably 2 of the best. Across the board. So.
Yeah, they were really good. Terror Island was so amazing because Millennium Island really held that fog in just so well. And then when they put Shoot the Rapids in, everything went to hell. Not only for Shoot the Rapids, but for the haunts as well.
And that's so important too, because Terror Island, I mean, you really felt transported and in a different place than Cedar Point, because it was an island you never really got to go on if you didn't do any of the other things. It just was a great location where these other haunts are sometimes off the beaten trail, or in an old ride. You know where you are, and you're thinking, okay. But that was such a unique location, so that helped out. And having Millennium Force screaming by was awesome.
Yeah. So overall, I think Cedar Point's haunt, you know what? They tone everything down as much as you would hope they wouldn't. And maybe this is just, me being, thinking about the glory days and stuff and that whole, but 5 years ago, I felt Cedar Point's haunt was really, really good with the amount of fog they used, with the scare actors, and I just felt that they were well trained and really into it. They still have a good core group of scare actors that, as much as I don't like the Screamworks scare zone, I don't like the theme to it. I think they have the best scare actors in there usually. They're usually working the hardest. And really trying to elicit good scares. Carnival used to be awesome.
Carnival was amazing.
Yeah, it's just fallen off ever since they moved it to Camp Snoopy, and it's kind of ever since that move, it's there's a lot. Cedar Point's haunt, I think, is good for a beginner in the haunt industry to get their feet wet. The indoor houses are pretty good. I'm not gonna knock them. They're better than the Six Flags haunts for sure. No question.
When I was younger, we would we would go to Six Flags Great America and do their haunt. And the first time we went to Halloweekends, immediately for the next few years changed. That's where we went. I went to Halloweekends every year. I wouldn't even go to Cedar Point the rest of the year. I would go specifically for Halloweekends. And it was for a very long time, early 2000s, top haunt experience for me, and like you said, I always remember telling grand stories of, it's so foggy, and you go through Carnival at the beginning, and the houses are doing some stuff I've never seen done in houses. And I went back one time probably in the 2010s area, and I could already tell there that it was not what it used to be. It was still good. Yeah. And from what I've heard just the last few years, it's toned back a bit.
I think they're purposely toning it back a bit. The haunts that I always liked, I loved Club Blood. Club Blood was
awesome.
Was that first part of Club Blood, still evokes real fear in me, that you would walk into this dark back alley and then you'd walk into this strobe light room of things, going back and forth, like these body bags that are clear, the clear body bags that are swinging back and forth, and people would be in there. Just the amount of not knowing where you're going, the being lost, that was so cool. I find it funny, though, that Zombie High School, I thought on both weekends, Zombie High School is actually running the best, which used to be the old Club Blood area. Yeah. I think the people in there had some really good hiding spots, and really that's what it's about. It's knowing how to properly work your room, how, instead of just, a lot of times scare actors just stand there and like try and look creepy, and in an inside house that doesn't work. You have to do something. You have to, and usually quick movements, popping out of things, like that's what really gets people. And I felt Zombie High School was on their game, for the most part. The other ones, I don't know. I didn't even do Eden Musée, to be honest with you, this time. I think that's a pretty good one usually too, but the lines were just too long. Crazy. Crazy lines both weekends. So, not much to say about Cedar Point's Haunt. Probably a good starting point. In the long run of things, it's something you should do just to experience it, but I don't think it's an absolute must do. All
right.
So moving on,
let's transition.
To
Carowinds.
Scarowinds, which I've always heard big things about Scarowinds down there. And let me say that when I went to Scarowinds, and maybe it's just me walking into a new situation and not knowing, like, in fairness, I've been through the Cedar Point haunts so often. It's like I could draw you a map right now of what happens in every house. Like it's to that point where I know what's going to happen. And it's also to the point where I know what should happen, and when it doesn't happen, it kind of annoys me. So so Carowinds being completely new to me, I got that old school Cedar Point feel. And some of the things I really liked about Scarowinds was, one, they have roaming hordes and maybe not so much of roaming hordes, just random people walking around. It's
simple but so effective.
Cedar Point tried to do that a little bit this year, but I just felt that they didn't have enough people. And that park's just so big. That's the problem is with Cedar Point. It's so big. It's so vast. But Scarowinds, I really like the roaming hordes. The costumes, I'm going to post a video sometime this week, because they also did an opening ceremony for all their monsters. And some of their costumes were pretty damn impressive. I like the Cedar Point costumes. I think the makeup work at Cedar Point is really where they shine. The costumes are sometimes a little bit iffy here and there. But the Carowinds costumes were above and beyond. They have this one of this medieval bone warrior that was pure leather studded with real metal. Looked amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I'll throw some pictures of that up here. But just looked amazing. And another thing I liked, fog everywhere. Fog machines everywhere. Not just in scare zones, but everywhere. Everywhere. That's what it's about. Like, there's fog machines everywhere. You could be walking down a midway and a blast of fog comes at you, and you get to walk through it and, do whatever you want in fog. But that was another really big thing that immediately struck me was, wow, I like this.
And what I like about that, and what I don't know, Halloween Horror Nights, I feel like there used to be more fog. Cedar Point, I feel like there used to be more fog. Yeah. It just keeps the whole event cohesive. Yeah. It keeps that atmosphere all together. And then those costumes, everything, more impressive than what I would expect to see. And I think they shine over there, and they have that market they know they can kind of invest a little more into, because they have to compete with a park just up the road who's a real contender in that, in that realm. So it's nice to see they put the effort in. So some of the houses over there, can you tell us a little more about?
Did all the houses, and my favorites, my favorite by far was the Cinema or the Silver Scream Studios. They might have changed the name to something else recently. The Cinema something. It's basically a hodgepodge of classic horror movies put together. But the way you start off in it is they have 3 sets of the heavy black rubber pieces, like the stuff that you'd enter freezers in, they're usually clear.
Yeah.
So there's 3 of them, and there's a strobe light going, and it counts down 3, 2, 1 as you walk through each consecutive one, and it feels like you're in a movie. It's
oh my gosh,
it's such
awesome.
a simple. Brilliant though. Like a simple effect that's absolutely played out perfectly. And I thought the one thing I liked is I felt that the indoor houses spent a lot more money on sets and things like that, and ambiance and environment, more so than Cedar Point does, because there's a number of Cedar Point haunts that you're walking through a hallway that's just, particle board splattered with paint. Which is okay as a transition, but at Carowinds, I didn't feel like I got that very often. A lot of their haunts were very, very intricate with the details.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really good. That one by far was my favorite of the haunts. Some other ones I enjoyed. Well, here we go again with our last topic, that there was a haunt that was supposed to be called the 7th Ward, which was an asylum.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa now.
Yeah.
Hey. You have to bleep that out, guys.
Yeah. So it's and they changed it to Urgent Scare, which is a haunt that's at Kings Island. So surprisingly though, they used an all new logo for it too, which I'm like, it's not the same logo as Kings Island. So I'm like, well, so they must have had it already in plan. Like, if we get called on this, we're just going to put this logo over it. But like I said on the last show, we had to use Hauntoverse because there were no maps for the event. All the Skeleton Key cards actually had stickers over them because they didn't want the 7th Ward name to still be visible, so they changed that too. Like, they went into some great lengths to get rid of this asylum theme. But the house itself was actually really, really good. The first time I went through was a Friday night, and sometimes on Friday nights that staffing is sometimes an issue, so it wasn't as full. But we went through it again later on, and it was a lot better the second time we went through it. I thought they had some pretty effective scares in there. I really, really liked it. Overall, I'll say this about Carowinds. I thought the enthusiasm of the workers really sold the event for me. That there were a number of times. That's so
great to hear.
Yeah, there were a number of times throughout the evening where I was commenting. I went with my buddy Jeff and his daughter Anna, and I said to him, these are people that love their jobs, and that's why this is good. The scare zones, the blood yard, we went through that about 5 or 6 times. And what's cool about Carowinds is they actually do their scare zones a lot of times in the off-beaten paths. So you have your main midway, and they'll find a new way to do their scare zone, so it feels like a haunt. Whereas sometimes like Cedar Point, like you're walking through Frontier Trail, but it's also a scare zone. This is you feel like, and the sets for the outdoor scare zones are maybe more impressive than the indoor stuff. Just a really cool event.
You're putting this on my. I have tried to make my way out. I've done Howl-O-Scream and Cedar Point. I haven't made it out west yet, but it sounds like I might need to put a road trip in for Scarowinds next year.
May I say this? But I might argue that the scare zones at Carowinds are definitely better than. I want to say that they're better than Cedar Point's, but I may say that they're better than Halloween Horror Nights as well. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know the thought you just put into making such a comment, such a statement.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, I've been less impressed, if you will, over the last few years with some of the scare zones at Halloween Horror Nights. And honestly, from the very first time I went, I always thought that they weren't great. And my basis from that was old Cedar Point and old other park haunts, and even scare parks if you're around one of those in the country. And that's good to hear for Scarowinds, because that's something I always felt that now some years Halloween Horror Nights knocks it out of the park. But then there's some years I think of it might have even been year 20 with the tower, the canyons of Lost Souls. I don't even know what it was. But it was, I remember in the daytime thinking, what is this? It's just a few towers with curtains, and it's not even big. It's a prop almost that you walk through. You know, it's not even a zone is a generous term. So that makes me want to go to Carowinds, because that is something that a lot of parks have started to neglect, is the scare zone experience. And again, I think it's to hide that. And again, in fairness to the parks, in boldness to the parks, the confidence and, you know, risk to say we're going to put this event on, because you have amusement parks that are made to be 100% safe, walking paths, lights, and just overall security. When it comes to Halloween events, that kind of gets thrown to the wayside. And there's parks that, you know, you look at Busch Gardens and Cedar Point, it's Halloween Horror Nights is a different type of chaos, but these other parks that are hilly or very dark and very hard to see, there's times you can't see in front of your face, you know, Frontier Trail. I remember times walking half a step just trying to be like, I'm going to hit something, I'm going to trip on something. To invite that into your company and your park is respectable, because other parks don't. There are parks that would be phenomenal for Halloween events, and they're never going to do it. And it's nice to hear that Carowinds, a park that, to be fair, 7 years ago, wasn't really on anybody's map, honestly, and is now being invested in like crazy. And now they're saying, hey, we're bringing Halloween too. Come check it out. We're doing what other parks have stopped doing. So that's phenomenal to hear, honestly. I might have to go confirm that next year.
It's an event that, you know, and I say this a lot about Carowinds, is it's turning into a park during multiple points of the season that I wish wasn't 16 hours away from me. Like that's a park. That's a park I would go to every year. And I don't say that about a lot of parks. I'm not a guy who says, hey, I want to go to a park every single year. There's very few parks that I visit every year. And Carowinds is quickly turning into one of those places that I would want to make at least one trip to. Fun fact about Carowinds too, that I don't know if you know this or not, which I always find ironic, is that back in the day, and I'm wearing a t-shirt right now, this was a $5 t-shirt because it's got all the old haunts on it, but you see down here at the bottom of the t-shirt, if you can, right there, they used to have a haunt called Fury. And
I did not know that.
Yes. They used to have a haunt called Fury, and it was like a top secret weapons facility that they were building using chemicals to build stuff. So I always thought it was really funny that they eventually turned their hottest ride and the best steel coaster in the world, according to some, into it was originally a haunt. So there you go.
That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. I did not know that. I
absolutely.
I love that. I'm still processing that. That's really cool.
Brian, you've been to a few places. Why don't you tell us about your experiences and your disturbing?
I'm off the beaten trail on some local haunts, as I cannot make it out to some park haunts this year. Location wise, I'm not really close to any that are really going on. Kings Island, I think, would be the closest. Or Scarowinds, honestly, at like an 8-hour drive, I think. So it's a bit of ways, and life's gotten crazy. But I've managed to fit some local haunts in. And coming up this month, actually, I'm hitting 2 of the biggest local haunts in the country, or scariest by some. Darkness in St. Louis is next weekend. I've wanted to get there for years. It's a staple. I know it's debatable on where it ranks, but I'm excited to see a haunt of that stature. And then a weekend after that, I'll be up in Michigan, hopefully checking out Erebus, which is supposed to be pretty crazy from what I understand. But the last 2 weekends, I did 2 of my childhood favorite haunts. Well, one was newer, but Devil's Dungeon. And going to back to our last show on controversy, this was a haunt that banked on controversy. They pushed themselves as Nashville's most controversial haunted house, and they meant it 10 years ago. This year, I hadn't been in 3 years, and it was good, but you could tell the quality has started to drop. The controversy wasn't really all there anymore. There were still a few scenes, and, you know, say what you will, think what you will. Some of the scenes play on domestic violence and or forced sexual instances, things you don't really want to see in a haunted house that really push the limits and leave you uneasy the rest of the night. But the things I always commended about these haunted houses, and local haunts always have this fear, is what's really going on, what's real, what's fake, who are these people? And I remember the first time I went to Devil's Dungeon and Jason Voorhees kicked his cabin door down. It slammed, he ran at us, stuck the machete in the wall and let go, and that sucker stuck in the wall next to my face about 12 inches away. And it's those moments where you're like, that's a real machete, and you could see the wood chipped away. This year, it's going to be at the bottom of my list of all the haunts I've been to. The main reason I go, they have the best maze, hands down. It's in the middle of the haunt. It's the most infuriating, stressful thing. You come into a room, there's 8 doors. They're all painted black. There's 1 black light, and there's 1 character. 7 doors lead you back to the same room. 1 door leads you to a second room of 8 doors. You go into that room, you got 6 doors that lead you back to that room. 1 door leads you back to the first room. Next door leads you what used to be to the end. They added a 3rd room that you now go into. So you have another room of 6 doors. And man, I'll tell you what, you can spend 15 minutes in there, or you can spend 50 to 90 minutes in that sucker, and it is infuriatingly fun. We were in there for about 25 minutes doing great, and then we found the first room accidentally, and we had to start all over. The maze is pitch black. There's 2 characters that follow you into the maze and mess with you while you're in there. It's so much fun. When you're out of the maze, there's a 3D part of the house that's next. Now, Andy, their 3D house is good, but the local houses get away with stuff park haunts can't really get away with. First example would be A, real weapons. B, the spinning tunnel. Have you ever been through the spinning tunnels? Anybody out there? Halloween Horror Nights has them. Patty's, Robert, you guys know what I'm talking about. They got the railing so you don't lose balance, right? Devil's Dungeon took that idea 1 step further, and they have actually, if you remember, I think it was like 15 years ago, shock toys were really popular. Yeah. You could shock people with stuff, and some of them hurt pretty bad. Imagine the worst shock toy you've ever had and double it, and that's the railings in this spinning circle. If you grab them, you feel it all the way up through your arm. It's an electric shock that grabs you. And again, this is the stuff that you don't expect and you don't see anywhere else. So they did a great job. Let's flash forward to their new haunt, owned by the same people but done much better. Haunted Hell. It took some newbies who had never been to a haunted house before. And to give you an idea of what this haunt is like, you show up, they have a sign on the front that says how many people have pooped themselves, thrown up, peed, given up, and they shame them. And they had 2 people added to the board while we were in line. 1 person who had to call it quits, and 1 person who had to leave the house because they were not feeling well. They felt like they were going to throw up. So they got a barrel of fire. They got characters. They got things in line while you're waiting in line that go off. And the very first thing that happened, I had to go to the bathroom. There's a porta potty. I went to the porta potty, and within about a minute of being in there, a character came and slammed on the wall, started banging on it. About 3 more came up. They had a chainsaw. They were holding it up to the vent while you're trying to, do your business. The intensity is just there. The blasting metal music. It's an uncomfortable experience from start to finish, and it's the kind of experience that you just I crave. I love park haunts. The thing you lack in local haunts, aside from things like Dent's Schoolhouse and Bates Motel in Philadelphia, Terror Behind the Walls, especially with some of our friends there, is the scenic design. Those houses have it. These lower tier houses that I'm going through, they don't have that. They have that homemade feel, you know. And now Haunted Hell and Devil's Dungeon do a great job. Haunted Hell specifically, with scares coming out of nowhere. But this is a 30 to 45-minute experience. There's a maze in the middle. You've got to get on your hands and knees and crawl through a pitch-black tunnel. You got to find the exits. And then the end is one of my favorite endings to a haunted house. They take the Texas Chainsaw Massacre idea with someone with a chainsaw, but it's a maze of blankets, and there's 2 characters in there with you, and it's just pretty much an open floor plan of just sheets and blankets everywhere. You got to find your way through, and on the other side, someone's waiting for you. Overall, they were great. If you're in the Tennessee, Nashville area, some of the better, but if you only have enough money for one haunt, you're going to want to go to Nashville Nightmare. I'm going there sometime. It's supposed to be this weekend. We'll see. Andy, I've told you it was my favorite haunt last year.
Yeah.
They've split up into 4 haunts this year. Same price or one price for all 4. I'm a little bummed about it. I think this is Andy and I kind of butt heads on this. I want to be in a haunted house for as long as you can keep me in there. 45 minutes, 60 minutes, that's what I'm talking about. I don't need these Halloween Horror Minute, 5-minute experiences or 8-minute experiences. Yeah, so that's Andy's like, get me out there. Danny's like, I'm not even going to go, by the way, because, you know, we were going to have a great time next year, Danny. So I'm excited to report back to you guys. The Darkness, I have really high hopes for because of their animatronics, their technological feats that they've accomplished in this house, which, by the way, have been inspiration to haunts all over the country. And then Erebus in Michigan. I have one of my friends who's going. He's a little nervous because I told him the last room in the house, they bury you alive. And they say, how long can you hold your breath? I don't know how it's going to end. I have an idea of how they do it because I've looked into some stuff, and it's stressful. I'm not going to lie. So I'm excited to report back for how that goes.
Well, that's definitely interesting. So you got some big stuff coming up. I still have a whole bunch of stuff coming up. The big one, obviously, Howl-O-Scream and Horror Nights this upcoming weekend. Hopefully everything works out well with the weather. But then after that, I'm going to hit up Great America for Fright Fest. I'm going to hit up the new Phantom Fright Nights at Santa's Village in Illinois, which I'm really excited for. That one looks like it could be pretty good. I'm hoping for good things there. And then you don't even know this, but there is also an option, and I don't know if I'm going to exercise the option.
Blackout.
To maybe do, the one haunt I've wanted to do for so long. And that is at Valley Scare, up in Minnesota. And there's one there called Dino Slaughter, which is a haunt through the dinosaurs alive. And I can only imagine that it's either going to be super bad or super great. There will be no in between.
Either. Yeah. It'll be awful or it'll be awesome. And I'm excited to hear about Santa's Village. Again, Andy's better with the park haunts. I love park haunts, but I like the local haunts. We try to get that mix.
I don't do those.
When you can do both of them, I'm trying to get him to go to Blackout. Maybe we'll pay him to go 1 year. If you do get to go to Halloween Horror Nights, if a hurricane doesn't come and rain devastation, Hamilton reference for all those musical nerds out there, right? I had a buddy go who's gone the last few years, and I just want to touch on this since Halloween Horror Nights is going strong right now. We haven't really brought it up yet. He's gone the last few years. So far, he's saying bottom 2 houses were Chance and Walking Dead. Top 3 were Halloween 2, Texas Chainsaw, and Exorcist. I've heard the original houses are phenomenal in detail, but lack on some of the scares. Have you heard anything different? I've pretty much across the board, Chance has been not a huge success with anybody.
I've not heard good things about that one. I've actually heard The Exorcist is a little light on people, or the one I've heard the most about is actually Krampus, and people really dumping on Krampus, with Krampus not having enough scare actors on the inside, being too reliant on mechanical stuff. I don't know. I've heard Tomb of the Ancients is a little dark. Hopefully they adjust it, because sometimes on opening weekend they
always start dark and they lighten them up.
Yeah, so hopefully by the time I get there, because I did hear that Tomb of the Ancients was way too dark opening weekend, and it was very difficult to see anything.
American Horror Story given a ton of love. My buddy's not a big fan of the show, liked the house. Everybody who loves the show raves about that house. I watched the walkthrough because that is the main reason I'm so sad I can't go this year. Hopefully the rumors of them doing the other 3 seasons next year are true, because I'm definitely going to try and get down there. He said Exorcist. When I talked to him on his first night, he wasn't impressed with Exorcist or Ghost Town. And it took him on his 4th walkthrough of Exorcist. He fell in love with it. And that's my problem with Halloween Horror Nights. You can go and get bad walkthroughs because of the way you conga line, the way they set up their scares. And again, we've talked about this. We're talking about again about what do you do with that big of an event and that popularity. And that's where local haunts thrive with me, because these haunts I did and the haunts I'm going to do, you get 3 to 5 people, and that's it. That's your group for the next 45 minutes. You get every scare. They get 3 characters to your group. It's intense. Halloween Horror Nights, especially if you get a cast change, you could see a house and it could be pretty, but you might not see anybody. And as we know, it could be your 4th walkthrough. There were houses I hated and hated and hated, and the last 2 weekends I hit everything. I'm like, that was actually great, and that's one of the things you got to consider.
Which is really sad, because for as much as they, really plan out those haunts at Halloween Horror Nights, you would think it would be more consistent, because everything is so repetitive that the actors do the same exact thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
You think everyone would get a decent experience, and it's just not the case sometimes. And it worries me a little bit, because, I only get to go 2 nights a year. And here we're now talking that Friday night might be off the board, because there's rumors that because of the hurricane, they might shut down all the parks on Friday. And they don't know if they're going to open up for horror nights at night, because the hurricane should be through, but they don't know the situation they're going to be in. So now I'm looking at maybe only having 1 night there, which makes it a much more difficult proposition. However, I have heard good things about Howl-O-Scream this year. And Howl-O-Scream, Danny went there, and Danny raved about Howl-O-Scream.
Really?
So that's exciting, because he's not a haunt guy, and he says it was really good.
He's not.
And then my buddy Dason, who
maybe
is also,
we're gonna make him one.
Maybe. Well, I doubt that, but let's we'll see. But my buddy Dason has been there. He lives in Tampa, and he's been there quite a bit at Howl-O-Scream, and he is really happy with this year's event. So I think Howl-O-Scream might be making those moves that we've always wanted it to.
Yeah.
2 new houses there. You can't shake a stick at that,
Nope. I say that's what we wanted, and it's their time to come up, especially with Horror Nights getting to this kind of standstill moment where people are looking for that more personal and unique haunt experience, and I think Howl-O-Scream definitely has the potential to offer that. So I'm pretty excited to see what they do there. But I think on that note, we shall end for this evening. We'll have some more shows. Hopefully you like these shorter shows, where we get to talk about things in a much quicker format. I am, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois. Good night, Andy. This is Brian Bass signing off until next time. And as we say, scare on.
Scare Warriors.
That's right.